Playoffs is the biggest stage for you to show like what you're capable of. Every single moment is super high pressure. Every single thing you do matters.
One step away from greatness, success is what you make it. Little voice inside my head said there's a chance you should take it. The kids I grew up with telling me I made it as I stand on this mountain. Look at all my haters' faces. They say it all came too fast with the trade places. It's more to the story, man, it's more to the pages. I do it cause I love it and losing is outdated. Now look at this problem that you created. Let's go!
TSM best ever season. First split in the North American LCS, and they make it to playoffs. Team Liquid topple a giant to take the series. CLG feels like the faith's done a pickup.
Cloud9 locking in that third seed for the playoffs.
That's the game, that's the match, that's playoffs secured for Immortals.
People think that TSM and Immortals are probably the top teams, but I do actually think that we can beat those two teams.
We're by far the underdogs. This is like our last opportunity to actually show like how good we can be.
We have like more to prove as a team. I think it's like more in line for us this split.
From last split, we got third place. It can prove that Immortals is gonna do well.
I want a 3P, and I know we can do it. And most people either step up or they don't.
I'm a champion.
After coming really close to taking first last split, with this roster, we don't really have any excuses.
Yeah, where the winners ride.
Let's go. Yeah, I'ma be a champion. Yeah, I'ma take it to the top. Yeah, it's time to rise, so let's go. Whoa.
Being 6, it doesn't really matter. I want to win.
We don't do well, and we don't make Toronto. It's do or die right now.
Placing second is a failure. I want to just win the whole thing.
We really need to work on really hard to get first places.
Comes down to like one play, we're gonna be the team that takes advantage of the other team's mistake.
So last time in Vegas, we were really close to winning, and this time in Toronto, we'll win for sure.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the 2016 North American LCS playoffs. Today, 2 of our top 6 teams embark on the next step in their journey towards the Summer Split Championship, and fans have packed the Battle Arena to see our teams duke it out in our first quarterfinal matchup. Meteos arrived ahead of his team a little bit earlier today, ready to go for today's matches. There on the opposite side of the rift is Team EnVy, Laud, and Hakuho in their first playoff performance alongside Seraph, who's the focus of our alt stream today. Thank you, everyone, for watching with us this afternoon. I'm James Dash Patterson, joined once again to break down all the action by Mark Zimmerman and Alberto Crumsargifo. Gentlemen, you've been with me all season long, but here we are into the postseason. How excited are you to watch the top-tier talent in NA go up against each other?
I'm super pumped because this is like crunch time. This is when everything you've been working for all season finally pays off. You get to see how you stack up against the best people in the league. No more, messing around with new picks. You really have to perform on today.
I don't know about you guys, but it's been 2 weeks, and I've been dying to see some league action, covering it all split long. This is the culmination of the strength of these teams, and it's about time that we can actually determine who is the best.
All right, well, with that, then, let's take a quick look at our roadmap for the Summer Split postseason. Today, third-place finisher Cloud9 battles against 6th seed Team EnVy, while Counterlogic Gaming and Liquid face off tomorrow in a rematch of the Spring Split semifinal showdown. Now, TSM and Immortals, they finished the regular season in the 1 and 2 positions, so they've earned themselves a bye into the semifinals next week. Now, regardless of who wins this weekend, the lower-seeded team will face TSM, and the higher-seeded team will go up against Immortals. That's important because if EnVy then wins today, that changes things up, right? Now, before we get into any more of that, there's more than the North American crown on the line here. Championship points and the chance to represent North America on the world stage is also at stake. So let's get a little refresher on where teams are currently positioned and what they stand to gain during playoffs. The first column here shows each team's current points. You can see that CLG, TSM, and Immortals are the top dogs for their top placement in spring. Now, the second column are the current points awarded for summer. TSM and Immortals with a guaranteed 40 since they have a bye to the semi. So this is representative of the minimum amount of points that the teams can secure based on where they are currently. Of course, if they go go further into the playoffs, they will secure more points. But right now, it looks like CLG and TSM locked together in that tie there for what would have been the second qualified position to Worlds. Now, more are on the table, with first place in Summer auto-qualifying for Worlds. Then second place earns 90 points, third gets 70, and fourth takes 40, while fifth and sixth earn 20 each. Now, the team that ends the year with the most points earns the second seed to Worlds, and the remaining 4 playoff teams will face off in the regional qualifier. A lot of information, a lot of stuff to parse through there, but ultimately, 3 of our teams will be representing North America at Worlds, and it's decided starting from here, moving through the conclusion of the regional qualifier. Before we get into today's matchup, let's talk a little bit about the state of the game in playoffs with the introduction of patch 615. We've seen it in a few other regions. Less lane swaps are happening. How do you guys feel about this change?
I think it impacts the junglers a lot, particularly with Rek'Sai and Nidalee being the strongest early game junglers. You just have so much pressure, and it impacts lanes in a way that is unmatched by anything. So we saw over in Europe how difficult it was to deal with the likes of Rek'Sai. So having blue side on this matchup seems like it's almost a guarantee. Either you first pick Rek'Sai or purple side has to ban it.
There's a couple other small changes just in terms of how the teams move around the map. Obviously, 2v1s are mostly gone. You see it less, it's more of a fringe strategy now that you can maybe potentially do it. But a lot of teams are focusing heavily on laning phase, and then even if you're winning lane, sometimes people swap out of it just because they have a tempo advantage. They can take the first turret to get that first turret blood gold, basically.
And of course, this is the kind of thing that we will expect to influence picks to some degree. You already mentioned, particularly with the junglers, but also in the likes of those 1v1s and 2v2s top and bot lane. For example, we saw Corki picked up today. Not something that's necessarily meta, but operates a much stronger in a 2v2 laning phase.
And I hope we can see the Vel'Koz out of Jensen, because it's such a strong laner individually, and it needs a lot of influence from the junglers. So if Proxen is not on his game to help Ninja out through the laning phase, Jensen can get a massive lead on his own and will be pretty much unable to be dealt with because it's so easy to just take cleanse and be safe.
All right, let's dial into that matchup then. Today's matchup, where third seed Cloud9 is taking on Team EnVy. Now, the boys in blue are heavily favored in this series, but this is the exact spot we found Cloud9 in last split before they got knocked out of the playoffs. So what do they need to do to make sure that they have a different outcome this time around?
I think they just have to prepare really heavily for the pick and ban phase of the series. I feel like that's where a lot of it's going to be decided, with the heavier emphasis on laning phase, as well as the fact that we know EnVy is a very counter-pick heavy team, and C9 is more of a standard team. They need to make sure they don't pick themselves into any holes where, like, they're early picking a Gnar blind and then they're getting counter-picked super hard. I think those are the kinds of things they'll need to be conscious of.
Okay.
And for me, what I'm looking for EnVy to do is going to be able to just win through their own counter picks and not go for the wonky style that we saw them towards the end of the split, where they picked these 4 tanks and then just relied on Law to be that kind of magic shred Kog'Maw, which just scales so hard into the late game, but ultimately has poor laning phases all around. And if we go back to their style, which Seraph picking the top lane carries, proxying on his aggressive junglers, maybe even the likes of a Graves if Rek'Sai's not in the pool, and then Ninja having free reign to pick whatever he chooses, hopefully not Ezreal mid this time around. But I think that if they do that, they should be able to give Cloud9 a run for their money.
Now, what about where these teams match up in terms of different points within the game, right? So early, mid, late, who are you giving advantages to based on where we are in the game?
What's interesting is both of them actually played a pretty similar style throughout the season, where both teams were on like top 3 in terms of average game time and bottom 3 in terms of like combined kills, meaning that both of them played relatively slower, not kill-heavy games. And I think that just plays further into C9's strengths. Whenever 2 teams have similar play styles, the team that's clearly better at those play styles generally wins. And C9 was amazing at vision control throughout the season. I think if it goes late game, that just favors C9. And so I think Crumbs was saying stay away from the Kog'Maw and those kind of baitier late game picks, and they need to look more early game.
And since this is a best of 5, one of the key things in a best of 5 in a long series is the mental fortitude that a lot of these teams have. And Cloud9 has been tried and tested. They have had a lot more raunchy games, if you will, this split, that kind of they didn't get phased too much. They were still able to bring it back for games 2 or game 3, wherever it happened. While EnVy, where they kind of lost game 1 and game 2, they kind of lost steam towards the end of the game. So I think that as long as the teams can maintain their composure, that'll ultimately be the one that can come out ahead, because whoever can create the most, I guess, disruption in the opponent and throw them off guard should be able to get a nice psychological edge on their opponent.
And this Cloud9 squad, this is one that has said this split would be different for them. So now is the time for them to prove it, right? But where do C9, rather, where have C9 done a good job in staying ahead of the competition in summer? And Team EnVy, right, a second half, they've fallen a bit this split.
Right, and I think Crumbs was mentioning before that there has been this kind of communication barrier in the team, where there's a heavy emphasis on Korean speaking on the top side of the map and English speaking bot side. And just players having to think not just about what they're saying, but how they're saying it is like, is this coming across correctly?
It's an extra step.
Right, it's just this extra difficult thing that you have to deal with, and that's something that was plaguing EnVy throughout the season.
All right, well, let's focus then on what EnVy could possibly do to come ahead in this matchup. So what would be the keys to victory for this freshman LCS squad? You know, understanding that there might be some communication issues.
I'm looking at their dual lane, specifically Lod and Haku. I think they're really strong laners. You know, we saw them as kind of the stars of the team, rounding out the composition of Koreans within their team. And Lod has been such a star player throughout the split. Obviously, he's not the best AD carry. There's quite a bit of competition there, but he's solid. He brings a lot of damage to his team, and he's such a young talent and a leader that I think that if he can get rolling, it's a lot easier to be comfortable in the position of a shot caller when you're ahead.
Right.
And we have seen Cloud9's dual lane kind of struggle in the laning phase every once in a while. So if the dual lane from EnVy can exploit that, come out ahead, maybe with a little bit of help from Proxen, make sure that they can snowball and translate that into that first tower gold, which is absolutely massive, I think that they'll be able to take over a nice lead and snowball the game.
I think another person to look at is Seraph. He's someone who obviously has some weirder counter picks, and against Impact, who mostly plays the same stuff, he might be able to get an advantage and then transition that to the bot side as well. I think obviously bot side is where the game is kind of won or lost at this point, mostly, but if he can get a snowball-y pick top side that gets ahead of Impact and then starts making TP plays or just draws all the pressure away from the bot lane, he might be able to help snowball the team.
Which I think points light to the Ashe pick right now, which Ashe at level 6, you hit 6, you hit an arrow bottom, free tower, free objective. Right. So powerful, sneaky, wonderful Ashe.
All right, well, yeah, we'll be tracking picks across all lanes, but a big part of EnVy's map control has come from their leader in the top lane. You just mentioned him, Seraph. So we're going to be looking closely at the top lane in our featured matchup today, which is Impact versus Seraph. Gentlemen, this is a big one. As we mentioned, a lot of it is going to hinge on these two players. Of course, Impact necessarily hasn't hit numbers that we've seen from him in the past, you know, the good old days of being a world champion, but has been a solid performer for the Cloud9 squad this whole split.
And I think you just need to look at the champs played. You see 3 tanks basically for Impact, and on the flip side, for Seraph, you had a bruiser, a mage, and a tank. So they play very different in terms of the champions that they pick.
Well, the meta is kind of already defined, so I think that the player that can find a way to redefine it on the fly and just say, hey, I want to be able to play this into this matchup, because as series develops, the meta within this series is what matters. It's not about what's the actual pick. So if, say, Gnar becomes the biggest priority and the Aurelia counter side can't deal with it, then Gnar is quickly the #1 pick, and people have to try to find a way to trust their team and say, maybe we haven't scrimmed with this, but I have a feeling that I can come out ahead in this matchup without it.
One of the most exciting things about Best of 5 series is the adaptation, is the development of the in-series meta itself. I've got to put you guys on the spot, as I always do at this time of the season, asking you for your predictions of this series. Mark, let's start with you.
I'm going to say 3-1 in favor of Cloud9. I think that having Reaper as the coach helps a ton, because as we were saying, the draft phase and adapting throughout the series is going to be a key part of it. And with EnVy having such a weird draft, having a mind like Reaper helping you figure out what is really the key parts that you need to react to is going to help them a ton throughout the series, not just the fact that I think that their players are a little better in most positions.
Okay.
Well, I think that C9 has the advantage in this matchup. I don't think it's going to be as easy as it's made out to be. I do think that EnVy is going to give them quite a bit of a run for their money, particularly because of the counter picks that they can have, the wide champion select, and the fact that when put on the spot, a lot of the carries, for example, Impact hasn't been that comfortable on the carry matchup. So I think that the top and bottom side for EnVy will be their strengths, and it's just a matter of how well can Proxen influence the map. So I do think that Cloud9 will come out ahead with their macro play, but it's going to be close. I'm giving it to them 3-2.
All right, and in a matchup where most people would say this is our most lopsided matchup in North America, we did just see a 6 seed beat a 3 seed in Europe. We'll see if we get the same today. You guys are still giving it to Cloud9. As we continue to move through the playoffs, we'll be highlighting the greatest moments of the summer split. And we want you guys at home to join the conversation, so tweet at LOL Esports with your favorite memories and hype plays from the past 9 weeks, and we'll feature the biggest and brightest moments on our road to Toronto. Now, we're about to head over to our casters, but first, a quick reminder that we are broadcasting an alternate stream experience over on NALCS 2 featuring Freak, Dyrus, and Zig. They'll be focusing on the matchup between Impact and Seraph in that top lane. So hop over to that stream if you're interested in a closer look at the top lane. Now, though, it's time for the main event. So the North American quarterfinals starts right now.
C9 has always done well